10 minutes, 10 rounds of live work every day. And we try to convince ourselves, like how a lot of combat athletes would. It's like, oh no, we're just being weak. We're going to tough through this. Are you trying to get better at suffering? If so, this is the way. But are you trying to get good at grappling? Are you trying to perform well? And that was the conversation we were having. What is the minimum effective dose to keep performance high, but still adapt and still build skill?
What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the Setless Strength Podcast. Today's guest is Deandre Corbe. Deandre is an amazing world-class grappler, easily one of the best grapplers and lightweights in the entire world. And he's going to be competing in a couple weeks at the Who's Number One 155-pound Grand Prix. And in this podcast episode, you're going to get some amazing insights to Deandre's training, nutrition, supplementation, and what he's done over the last couple years to really become one of the best grapplers in the entire world. So if you want to get some specific insights on how to lift heavy, how to roll hard, how to recover faster, how to perform better as a competitor, or just even perform better as a hobbyist. Someone like myself, I don't compete in jiu-jitsu anymore, but I'm always trying to find new tips and new tactics that I can pull from some of the best athletes in the entire world to enhance my own training. And Deandre does an amazing breakdown of what a full week of training looks like and gives lots of practical tips that you can use whether you are a competitor or you're just someone like myself that loves to lift heavy and roll hard. Before we dive into the interview, I wanted to let you know that this episode, just like every episode, is brought to you by thestrengthmatrix.com. This is where I'm helping athletes, working with them to help them build brutal grappling strength, pack on slabs of muscle, and develop their conditioning to a point where they never gas out. If you want to get started on kickstarting your grappling athleticism this year, you can go to thestrengthmatrix.com/grappler and check out a free training course called Grappler Accelerator. This course has everything you need to begin enhancing your grappling athleticism so ultimately you can perform better on the mat. It comes with a strength and conditioning program, simple and clean diet guide, super sleep toolkit, and recovery protocols, really everything that you would need to become a better grappling athlete. To get access to that program for free, you can go to thestrengthmatrix.com/grappler. And without further ado, let's dive into the conversation with Deandre Corbe.
Deandre, welcome to the show, man.
Thank you for having me. Pleasure.
Dude, it's great to see you again. Before we get too deep into all the awesome stuff that you're doing with opening up your new school, prepping for this big Who's Number One event, we've seen you and your brother compete and train crazy hard on the mats. But I think with all the skating content you guys have been putting out, who wins in a game of skate?
Dude, my brother has been spending extra time on the board. I think my brother definitely will beat me in a game of skate. He has a bigger bag of tricks than I do, but
Okay.
I have some consistency in some tricks. So if I catch him sleeping, I may win. But right now, Gavin is almost a guaranteed win in skate.
Okay, nice. If you're doing skate, what's your trick? You're I gotta close it out. This is the one thing I got to close it out.
See, that's the thing. I don't even have anything that Gavin can't do. I'm just super consistent with the basic tricks, like basic pop, shove it, kick flip, like white belt level skateboarding tricks. I got them. Maybe not as consistent as before, but that's the thing. That's why I think Gavin will definitely beat me. He has all the tricks I have and even some more. So for sure, he's gonna I don't have anything that is gonna trump him.
Nice. Nice. Well, awesome, man. Well, dude, it's good to see you. We met in person a couple years ago at Mark Bell's gym when you and Greg came out for Mark Bell's Power Project. You guys also did a seminar that weekend. That was still to this day, probably the best seminar. I guess two seminars because you and Greg did two in one day. Those are the best seminars I'd ever attended. And it was awesome getting to learn from you in person and hear about all the different things you were doing in the gym and on the mat, while at the same time balancing your full-time job. But now fast forward to today, you're now a full-time athlete, which is super exciting. So my first question for you is, what has that transition been like, going from being, high-level world-class grappler, still working a full-time job, to now making the transition to being full-time athlete and now coming up a school owner?
I mean, transitioning from the full-time job 9 to 5 to what I'm doing now as a full-time athlete and gym owner, I think nothing has really changed in my day-to-day training. I train the same amount of times. We're probably two practices on the mat and then a strength and conditioning session mixed in there. The only thing I would say that's a big factor, big difference is the rest time. I get a lot of recovery, a lot of recovery. Before when I was like, working 9 to 5, would do our morning practice. You kind of rush, shower, scarf down your breakfast, get right to work, and that's no longer there. With that being said, initially when I first had just started becoming a full-time athlete, I had to kind of deal with this consistent urgency I used to have when I was working. So, I would practice and get right to work, and you kind of just are on go mode all day. And even when I stopped working my 9 to 5, that was still kind of there. So I was kind of having to redirect that energy into more like down regulating, just like putting more efforts towards recovery. And like I said, no training has really changed. It's just I'm very recovered. Definitely I wouldn't say it's less stressful, but it's stress that I would like in my life now.
For sure, for sure. When it comes to down regulation, I know that's something that really any grappler that trains in the evening tends to struggle with. Is like
Mhm.
you go to jujitsu at 6:30 or 7 o'clock, and either you work all day, or maybe you're someone like yourself where you have more time to get in more training sessions. But especially if you're doing evening sessions, down regulating and getting a good night of sleep can be really difficult. So, what are some of the tools or some of the protocols you use to help kind of down regulate yourself post training?
Yeah, so some of the immediate off the mat. First thing I do is just lay down for 5 minutes. Don't try to rush out the gym. Lay down for 5 minutes and just slow my breathing down. That first 5 minutes I feel is like super critical, if especially when you're transitioning from like a highly stimulated state to trying to go home and rest. So the first 5 minutes, it doesn't have to be crazy complicated. Just slow your breathing down, extend your exhales, and just think of nothing. Like just appreciate the training. All those reflections will come into your head anyway about training. Just lie there, sit there, breathe slow. And then the next thing I would probably do, like I would prioritize, is as soon as I get home, start getting a good recovery meal in. And I know diet's really individual to people. Some people could do well on a big meal before bed, some can't. So get that recovery meal in, whether it's a small one or a large one, depending on your individual preferences, and just be mindful when you eat that. And then, down regulate doesn't have to be complicated. Do something that calms you down. One of the things I see is like when people ask that question is they want a protocol, they want you know, a checklist. And sometimes just stressing over the checklist will kind of get you out of that down regulated state. It's like, doesn't got to be complicated. Slow your breathing down, eat a good meal, and just relax, man. Don't be so stressed about de-stressing.
I think you bring up a great point because I forget the term, but someone came up with a term where it's basically like y- being paranoid about your health markers is making you unhealthy. So like caring so much about being healthy ironically makes you unhealthy. And I think you bring up a great point. Like, yeah, trying so hard to relax kind of takes away the intention of actually relaxing. One thing I love that you and Greg and a lot of the other guys at Standard talk about is this idea of invariance, specifically when it comes to building skill on the mat. Are there certain invariants that you have with your recovery, or at least with like stress management while you're balancing the training that you do in the gym and on the mat?
Oh yeah, there's some like non-negotiables or like things I try to strive for every day in terms of just recovery. First thing is going to be sleep, and you probably heard everybody that's going to be on this podcast, if you ask about recovery, they're going to talk about that. So anything around sleep where you could get a good, before I was convincing myself I was getting away with six when I was like 6 hours of sleep when I was working, but then I saw the difference when I was like sleeping 8+ hours, and I was like, man, I was really nerfing my ability to recover. But so that's the first thing. Just sleep is a kingpin. Uh, good, depending on like where you're at in the competition schedule, good nutrition, enough energy just to keep you going throughout the day, especially supporting a couple multiple mat sessions, multiple strength and conditioning sessions. And then other than that, and also this is a big one I'm into is like just low intensity movement throughout the day. Um,
Mm.
Me personally, I like walking. I walk a lot. Um, I think some people think I walk too much, but I think just, between sessions, it helps with your that transition from like the training state to a rested state. That walk in between can kind of help you make that, turn that dial down as opposed to hitting a hard off switch. So those are the things that for me that never change, sleep, proper nutrition, good nutrition. I know that's very individual, but and then also just some low level movement. Could be walking, it could be, just some mobility in between sessions. Those are the things that I tend to stick to.
For your sleep, is there anything in particular that you're doing now that you don't have a typical 9 to 5 job? That is there anything that you're doing that allows you to get a little bit better sleep? Is there anything you're doing with your light environment, phone time, supplementation, anything like that?
Oh yeah, for sure. I think one of the things I try to do is no phone an hour before sleep. Like, obviously there's some, some emergencies or some urgent things you gotta kind of take care of. But I try to have no phone, before an hour before sleep. Um, Now that I have the luxury of not having to, wake up and go to work and clock in, I wake up with the sun. I'm able to do that. So I go to sleep and I'm pretty consistent with waking up with the sun, which was before that was unheard of when you're working a regular job. Um, but yeah, it's just those are the things I sometimes mess with some magnesium before bed. That's one supplement I found anecdotally that's helped me out a lot. It gets me in a pretty, parasympathetic state. It helps me downregulate. Um, but yeah, no phone, wake up with the sun. Um, and then also just make the room a place for sleep. I don't
Mm.
try to do things in my like do work in my bed or answer emails. I just reserve my bed for sleeping. It's like that's something that's helped me out a lot.
Was it difficult to wake up with the sun? Like just going so many years, like being on a schedule, clocking in, clocking out, and then going from like I can just wake up whenever. Was that difficult to adjust to?
Uh, at first, yes, because circadian rhythms are real, and you get caught into these cycles. You're in trained to kind of wake up. Even when I was working, I wasn't waking up with an alarm. So for a little bit, I was waking up what is like 5:30, and definitely during it's still dark outside. I roll out of bed and turn the lights on to try to wake me up. But over time you start like it starts to organize that way. Like your body starts to know, hey, go get that extra hour and then we could go you'll reap the benefits of the extra hour of sleep that you probably never really knew about until now.
Right, right. You mentioned nutrition. What does your nutrition look like right now? I know you're prepping for the Who's Number One 155 Grand Prix. So, as you're in
Mhm.
training camp, are there any changes that you make with your nutrition specifically for kind of the rigors of training camp?
Yeah, so right now about like when I'm getting ready for camp, the first thing I do is
Mm.
start tracking. And usually I'm pretty consistent. I'm very simple. I eat the same things every day, so it's very easy to track. But once I get into camp, I just like dial it in a little bit, like let me see what actually I'm eating. And then from there, it's easy to make adjustments. Right now, I'm eating like plenty of carbs, plenty of 1 pound per 1 gram per pound of body weight for protein, getting plenty of carbs, filling in the fats. It's all tracked. And one thing I do is leading up to, that final weight cut, I always try to keep carbs, fiber, and sodium high because those are the things we're going to manipulate towards that last week when we're cutting weight. So if you keep them high, you get pretty good big acute weight loss effects in that last week when we're doing all the, glycogen depletion, water loading, and then eventually passive dehydration, and it makes that process a lot easier. But right now, I don't have any dietary restrictions. I just eat clean whole foods and just make sure I'm recovering for training. Like I said, I'm real simple. I don't make it complicated, and this is what's been working for me for the last, however many years.
Do you structure your nutrition around training at all? Like you have like your set limit for like carbs, protein, and fat, but are you divvying those out across the day for like, hey, I'm gonna have this many carbs before session number one, this many carbs after, and kind of structure it from there, or is it just based off feel?
Yeah, so I have a initially it was very rigorous because
Mhm.
when I was trying to support when I was new to the training load, I would like, all right, let me keep tabs on it because now I've been training this way for so long, it's kind of intuitive. Like one of the things I do now is I don't know if you heard about this carb supplement, Vitargo. Vitargo is something I like in the morning. We have morning sessions around 9. Start first sessions at 9 a.m. Uh, and I roll out of bed probably around 7. And sometimes it's a little hard for me to get a full breakfast right before that training session. So literally on the way to training, I would just like drink a serving of Vitargo, which is about, you know, 40 grams of carbs if to support like an hour session. And that gets me through that session. And then after that, I start getting my meals in, and usually those meals are like I said, based on my macros, they're pretty balanced meals. Like because I'm training multiple times a day. I have a balanced meal, and usually I have like I have ample nutrients coming in. But the thing I would try to prioritize, if any, was like just get those quick acting carbs before a training session. You know, stay focused. You don't want to like you start to you realize when your blood sugar's low and your focus goes out the window. I don't want to waste any of that time on the mat being unfocused. So I try to get some carbs in before, and those are usually the last carbs to go when I'm cutting weight.
Is Vitargo like a highly branched cyclic dextrin kind of product?
Yeah, I forgot what the whole technology around it is, like how they formulate it, but it's like anecdotally from my experience, it's just it doesn't it sits well in my stomach, and I could drink it like in training. Some of these carb drinks probably like from in my experience like kind of wreck my gut a little bit and it makes me like kind of bloated for training. I've never had that with Vitargo. It's like I've been it's I've been using that for the last couple camps just to get those extra carbs in, and it's been working wonders.
That's awesome. I think once you train with a pre-training meal, it's like why on earth would we ever go back to training
Oh, yeah.
fasted? You know, it's convenient to not worry about eating something, but you feel so much better.
Oh yeah, yeah. And that being said, sometimes it's cool to experiment with like being fasted, especially these. One of the things my brother and I have always done is coming up, we are so willing to experiment with different, modalities. And we were just taking information like, oh, this worked, this didn't. We could keep this, we could scrap that, and it ends up organizing into what we do today. All these different, experiments led to the habits we have today, and it makes it a lot easier, especially when you're trying to balance, either a full-time job and multiple training sessions. That early on experimentation really helped.
Speaking of experimentations, when I first met Greg, he had come out with Noah about a year before you and Greg came out, and he was
Mm.
telling us about an experiment you guys were running where I think he said twice a week you guys were doing 8 8-minute rounds or 10 8-minute rounds and running with that. Is that like what were the results of that experiment, and are you guys still doing that?
So I'll lay out the experiment right here. When we first got the standard, we had this. We didn't really have any titles to our name. This is before anybody had won anything. Our goal at the time, ADCC was the biggest uh, event in grappling. Our goal was to get to ADCC, And, we got a bunch of young dudes that are very hungry to become, take their grappling to the next level. So what we did, it wasn't 2 times a week. It was 7 days a week. Uh, we would only do 10-minute rounds because we were trying to get to the black belt level. Uh, as you, as any of the people that listen to this podcast, or if you see our previous podcast, Greg runs using our approach called the CLA, and we only do live work. So 10 minutes, 10 rounds of live work every day. We did it all in one go. So it was like 2 hours at the about 2.5 hours at the end of the night because we didn't know how to schedule around work. We would just do it all in the evening. And at the time we did that, it at first it was okay. We were getting through it. We were learning about ourselves. We are like, oh, we need to recover. We need to get our sleep going. But after a while, we started seeing some performance degradations, and we try to convince ourselves like how a lot of combat athletes would. It's like, oh no, we're just being weak. We're gonna tough through this. It's like we're gonna if we want it, we're gonna grind for it. So we stuck with that. But then you started noticing it wasn't just a single person thing. It was like the room across the room, everybody was like their performance was degrading. So we got together and we said, all right, we found the max, max volume. What is the minimum effective dose to keep performance high, but still adapt and still build skill? So we messed around with that. So we started taking a single day off. All right, that was the improvement. Okay, for sure. And then we said, oh man, we feel great. We were looking forward to that single day off. And then we started separating the 2 hour session to two 1 hour sessions in the morning and in the evening, working around work, obviously early in the morning and then right after work in the afternoon. That what we noticed was the guys were really like benefiting from that because we knew it was only an hour. We put in good intensity and we could rest right after. And then the next thing we did after that is like, how about we introduce another rest day in the middle of the week? So Sunday and Wednesday we have completely off, and then uh, Monday, Tuesday is pretty intense rounds. You get a Wednesday off. You finish up the week Thursday, Friday, and an optional practice on Saturday, and then Sunday off. And what we noticed is like our performance when we were starting to improve. Like we weren't feeling tired when we got to the competition. We were actually enjoying life a little more because we weren't so smoked. And a lot of our guys improved very fast. And for us, that is the what we deemed as the a good enough volume to get to where we want to go. But we came to that through the crazy experiment of doing 10-10s every night, Monday through Sunday. And it took a group dialogue to say, hey, and this is what we bring as standard. Like we were always talking about what we can improve on, and we were like, hey, maybe this isn't the best way, right?
Mm.
And I think that's what sets our gym apart from a lot of different gyms, because our coach, he's in there with us every day. He sees it, and we open this dialogue where, like, hey, coach, maybe this is not the way, because we understand that everybody there is for the same mission. We want to just improve as fast as possible, improve as much as possible, and perform as well as possible.
Do you think there was a moment in doing all that crazy high volume where just the grind and the mental toll of going through that was the biggest benefit, and like the group of guys that went through that came out of that with a higher mental work capacity that they're still getting gains from now, even though the volume's a little bit less, but the intensity is still high?
You know, I would like to say so because I went through it. But like no, doing anything hard, like anything difficult, and getting through that is gonna make you, a little more resilient, whether you call it physically or mentally. Um, you know, it's just it was getting to the point where we were getting good at suffering. That
Mm.
was the skill. That was the skill. That's what it looked like. Um, and you have to ask yourself, are you are you trying to get better at suffering? If so, this is the way, right? Because it's very difficult, right? But are you trying to get good at grappling? Are you trying to perform well? And that was the conversation we were having. Don't get me wrong. I think at in any young athlete's time, and when they're striving, is like, especially when you're like in that training age of 6 years of training, right? There's gonna be times where you're gonna bite down hard for a long time, and I think there is some benefit to that. But I think also having open dialogue with your coaches, whether it's multiple coaches like strength and conditioning and skills, and really saying, all right, are we getting good at suffering? If so, if that's the intention, yes, we're in the right place. But if that's not the intention right now, and the intention is to feel good for performance day, maybe we need to do some adjustments. And I think that's a conversation a lot of people, especially combat sports athletes, they have, and they'll realize whether they become aware of it or not. Something's gonna give, either the mental or the physical. Um, but I think being a little more graceful and with that conversation with your coaches is the first step to deciding, hey, are we doing the right thing right now for the right people?
Mm. As an athlete and as a coach, and especially one that is experienced as yourself and using the constraints led approach, how are you monitoring success within a training session? And correct me if I'm wrong, but if someone's just winning all the constraint based games, the challenge probably isn't enough for them to really get better if they win everything at 100%. If they lose every exchange, they're probably just getting beat up and they're getting really good at suffering. So where is that middle ground? Is there like a certain percentage, like a certain win percentage or something you're looking for to monitor success in a training session?
Oh, yeah, for sure. There's no hard number, but it's not on either ends of those spectrums for
Mm,
sure. All right. I don't know if it's 80-20, 70-30, and I'm not. So you should be winning some and you should be losing some.
mm,
Now, what happens is, um, you know, and that's not per in the single session. You may one day come in and you win all the sessions or win all the exchanges, and the next day lose all of them. You're still in that ratio because it was if you're looking at the time scale of the week, you're still there. So there is a definitely a ideal ratio. I don't know the exact number, but it's not, like I said, it's not either winning or all losing. So one thing that we do at Standard to make sure that we're staying there is we have this rule. So if you're doing 2 sessions a day, the, in the morning session, you cannot train with the same person in the evening. So you have a different body. It could be a lesser skilled opponent, it could be a bigger opponent, it could be a less experienced opponent. So you're going to get those variations in in the exchanges. And we also have another rule. Um, you try to not repeat a partner in the week if you can.
mm,
If you can. So we're getting a lot of introduction to a lot of novelty, a lot of variation, uh, and the tasks typically stay the same or they adjust depending on, again, that's another thing we could adjust. If our coach sees that, oh, in general everybody's not getting success, we may adjust the task constraint a little bit, maybe make the win goals a little easier to achieve or harder depending on what he's seeing.
mm.
So adjusting the task, adjusting your partner selection can help you stay within those. Am I, how do you know if you're getting better or not? And it's somewhere in that golden zone. And for everybody it's different, but I could tell you right now, it's not on these opposing ends.
Right, right.
Right.
When you're monitoring intensity with that kind of training where it's all live goes, what are you doing to kind of like monitor and vary the intensity from session to session? I mean, it'd be awesome if we could all be like at 100% maximum intensity every single day. And not only is that not realistic, that's not always conducive to long term progress. So, what are the ways that you're kind of dialing up and down intensity for those training sessions across the week?
Awesome. I'll give you from the perspective of athlete and from a perspective if I was running the room. All right. A couple things that we could adjust from the coach's perspective if I'm running a room, to monitor intensity. We do not like putting out, hey, go 50% or go, uh, you know, some nebulous percentage out because that's what it is. It's ambiguous. I don't know what 60% looks like, right? So what? the levers we pull are time. For example, if I set a longer round time, the intensity tends to go lower because it's a long time. It's like a marathon versus a 30-second sprint, right? But if I shorten the time and say accomplish your task in shorter time, guess what the intensity is going to inherently do? It's going to go up. Um, another thing we kind of mentioned earlier is the nature of the task. Sometimes if I don't want people going to like these long drawn out very taxing exchanges, we won't go to like a full score, right? We may like, hey, just get hands connected or just achieve a precursor condition to what we want, and that way through the task, intensity is kind of managed. And the last thing is like, especially if you're like, let's say that's the two things from the coach's perspective. From the athlete's perspective, if you want to modulate intensity, one thing you could do is one partner selection. If you're feeling smoked today, guess what we're gonna do? We might go with somebody lighter. We might go with somebody less skilled. That being said, we still want to get improved. So the other thing we could do from the athlete's perspective is narrow our focus just on some basic things. Let's say, for example, right now I'm super fatigued, intensity is very high, and the task is to take my partner down. In my current state, I cannot even perceive doing a takedown on this guy, right? So one thing I could do is as an athlete is narrow my focus. All right, let's try to just at least put more hands on him than they have on me. Or let's try to at least let's can I get his hands on the mat or can I get his hands off of me? And what you'll notice is just doing a more narrow focus around the bigger task, it kind of, it helps you save, like, lower that intensity a little bit until you're recovering and you could go ahead and start trying to do the full score. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yes. So if I understand correctly, you're changing what you're focusing on, either as the coach or as the athlete, you're changing what you're focusing on, or as the coach, you're giving a different prescription of something that's a little less intense by it being not as complicated or maybe not as complete. So instead of going for a full takedown with a 3-second pin like ADCC rules, just
Mm,
lock your hands, or you get both hands to touch the mat. We'll count that as a win, and the game resets. And then the other thing you mentioned was time. To do something for 3 minutes, both guys going live, is going to look very different than to do something for 30 minutes, which kind of an
so
extreme example, but I think I'm understanding what you're saying correctly.
yeah, yeah, for sure. So those are like objective measures we could literally like change as opposed to being, hey, today I want you to go 10% or 50%, you know. If anybody that's ever rolled before with especially with a good training partner, your one of your regular training partners, you guys start 50% and doesn't end 50%. I could guarantee you that. You start opening it up a little bit, now we're full sparring, you know. So we take away some of that ambiguity out of it with by manipulating those things.
Hey, real quick, if you want to become a jacked and dangerous grappler this year and you want to consistently feel and perform your best both in the gym and on the mat, you need to take a much deeper look at your health. You may not even realize that there could be some serious health markers and things going on with your hormones that are holding you back from being able to get brutally strong, pack on slabs of muscle, and improve your grappling athleticism. That's why I partnered with Merrick Health, because I wanted to get on track to fully optimize my performance and my health. They run lab tests that check over 100 different biomarkers, and by working with one of their expert coaches, I was able to get a personalized roadmap that tackled everything from supplementation, nutrition, hormone optimization, really everything that I needed to start seeing results and improving my performance in just a couple of weeks. You can get the exact same blood panels that I get and the ones that I order for all of my athletes, plus get 10% off your initial assessment by going to the link in the description below and using code SETLAGE at checkout. That's merrickhealth.com, code SETLAGE to get 10% off your initial assessment. Now, back to the show.
For you as an athlete, do you have specific days on the schedule where, regardless of how you feel, like the intent is to push a higher intensity? So, like every Tuesday morning, like we're banging, like it's going to be high intensity Thursday morning low intensity? Like, are you scheduling those out, or are you just striking while the iron's hot?
No, it's definitely like one of the things I'm blessed with is my coach, my strength and conditioning coach, Rob Wilson, and Greg. They're all on the same page. They talk to each other. For especially for the athletes that are, competing on bigger stages. So I could give you a rundown of my typical week. Monday is my hardest day because we're coming off a rest day. We're coming off maybe 2 days of rest. Monday, my strength and conditioning is probably the most neurologically, central nervous system demanding day. And then my rounds and my live practice is also very intense on Monday. So we stack them all on one day. Tuesday is a lighter day, but we're still training. It's maybe, like I said, we manipulate some of those task constraints or the time constraints depending on what I'm feeling, and we could go into like what determines that because I track metrics that are shared with all my coaches. Tuesday is a lighter day and it's a lighter strength and conditioning day. Probably do a little bit of maybe some light gymnastics because that's part of my programming. Maybe some low volume hypertrophy work just to, get some blood moving, and then some, just flowing. That might look like my Tuesday strength and conditioning, and then my two on the mat sessions. Like I mentioned before, Wednesday completely off, which is amazing because by Wednesday, if you train correctly, the way that was intended, you would want the day off. It would have been six training sessions total, four on the mat and two uh, on the strength and conditioning side. And Wednesday is completely off. And the thing that we do as competitors on my team is like we all go meet for coffee in the morning, just chill, talk about training. I'm still with my boys. We're still, it's a good culture. And my then after Wednesday, refeed. Thursday is just like Monday. Another neurologically, uh, you know, demanding day, hard training, and same Friday, maybe a little more intense than Tuesday is like a medium day, and then Saturday, if you feel good, you come in, do a light S&C work, and then do on the mat for an hour. But if you do not feel good, and when I mean feel good, if your metrics are off and or you're like subjectively or objectively metrics are off, you cut that day and you take the whole weekend off. Get ready for Monday because it's going to be a hard one. That's like literally my how I manage load, or not, excuse me, how Rob manages my load throughout the week.
I love it. Thank you for that breakdown. And
Yeah.
one thing I loved from our previous conversation a couple years ago was you talked about subjective metrics and objective metrics
Mhm.
that help kind of track recovery, track readiness. Have you well, first of all, what are those metrics? And then what are some ways that you're kind of balancing that data? Unless it's like it's all Rob and Greg and you don't look at it at all.
Like I said, I have a little bit of insight onto it. Like I'm the one actually testing and tracking them, so obviously I'll have direct access. I see the data, but like one thing I've noticed from my previous line of work, uh, a single point of data really means nothing. We're trying to look at trends, so I track it, I test, I send it to Rob. Rob, he's the expert in the strength and conditioning side, so he will determine like, oh, something's off with D this week. And a lot of times it's coincided with a heavy travel week or uh like a unusually high volume week. So we're tracking those trends, and then he mentions it to Greg, and then Greg will adjust practice. And it's all unbeknownst to me as an athlete because my job as an athlete, although I know some about this stuff, my job as an athlete is to come to training with effort and focus. Whatever is set out, I'm going to do it. And I think, you a really good athletes, you don't never really have to tell them to put focus and effort. However, when the coaches are on board, they could know when the body, like the athletes are starting to not recover or are overreaching, and they adjust accordingly.
Do you think that even helps just the coach athlete relationship as a whole? Like, if for a coach to say like, "Hey, like we're gonna dial things back because you look like shit today," that is very different than like, "Hey, I'm seeing all this data. I'm not even gonna tell him. I'm just gonna dial it back anyways, and he's just gonna is do his thing." You know?
That's exactly why I've delegated this stuff to Rob and Greg, because if you came up to me and this, I could speak for most athletes that want to, make it into elite level. If you tell me that we're going to back it off because I I I look like shit or feel like shit, or I'm going to tell you you're wrong, I feel great and I'm going to go train, right? That's just me, and me personally. I have had a lot of friends do that as well. But like I said, are we getting better at suffering or are we adapting here? So, that's why I let coaches be coaches and me as an athlete just be an athlete. Now, because I know all this stuff and this dialogue has been open from the athlete side, when I transition over to coaching, I am going to do similar things as well. I'm like, yeah, okay, my guys are gonna come here with focus and effort. I just gotta make sure I'm a third set of or another set of eyes that are not biased or less biased, excuse me, and say, hey, maybe put some training interventions that they'll help them continue to grow. Um, and every athlete's different. Some athletes may like that conversation. Said, hey, you're looking like crap today. Go take it off, you know.
Mm.
And I think that's part of the art of coaching too. I'm a rookie coach. I've never really I haven't developed my room yet, but Greg has, and he knows every athlete's individual, and he needs to find a way to deliver information to them in a way where you know these athletes are still adapting and they're still you know enjoying the process of practicing.
Right, right. You mentioned your strength and conditioning work, and if I remember correctly, you had posted something about some of the conditioning training that you're doing, where you're doing some intervals before most of your grappling sessions. What do those intervals look like, and what have been the results of that experiment that you've been running?
Well, yeah, in the last two camps I've done, I've been doing a lot of my conditioning, like circa practice time. So either before or after. Um, One of the reasons we did that is just to manage load. Uh, Sometimes if we did this giant strength and conditioning block where like you do your strength work and you do your conditioning at the end, that may take sometimes upwards towards 2 hours if you do the whole thing, right? And that's taking a lot of time out of your recovery. So one thing that we've experimented with is like, let's say like for example, we're doing some like you want to hit your volume for zone two, right? In throughout the week. So what we've done is I would go to morning practice, uh, and then practice. It's all live work, so your conditioning is being tested, and then right after, you just go right into your conditioning piece. It's probably gonna be like 20-30 minutes at most, and I'm gonna have my heart rate monitor on. I'm gonna make sure I'm staying within my correct zones for the appropriate uh training session, and I'll just ride the conditioning like the elevated heart rate from the practice into like more cyclical conditioning pieces, probably on the assault bike, and that could be either after or before, and
Mm.
that just helps me with not having to do a whole extra conditioning session because the training day is already pretty full, right? Can we can we squeeze out a little more conditioning from that wrestling practice we had this morning and like make push the needle a little bit in terms of the conditioning adaptations we want. So that's the whole goal around that. And I've been finding that very useful in terms of my recovery. I still get my numbers, I still get the proper volume I need for just getting that aerobic capacity to where it needs to be, and I'm not having to do a whole separate session that's going to take
Mm.
maybe 30-40 minutes.
Do you have a preference on whether or not you do it before or after rolling?
So if we're doing some very low intensity like zone 2, like steady state stuff, we may do it before.
Mm.
almost like a warm up. You get for me, it's like I use Morpheus, so it kind of puts my zones in the right spot. You know, easy day, 20, 30 minutes before practice, I'm gonna do like stay at zone two, probably 140 to 145, beats per minute. I'm looking at that. The Morpheus has an interface that's pretty easy to use. But then the other one is a more like metabolically demanding session. You're doing like a couple intervals, like maybe 10 to 15 intervals of like some hard sprints in there. Like put up next to like some steady state stuff. So it's like easy, hard, easy, hard. Usually I do those at the end of a practice.
Mm.
So I don't want to like take away too much from my reserves before practice, because practice is where skills built, and skill, for even like especially now, skill is actually the thing that pays the bills. So I don't want to I don't want to take away any focus from the mat time.
Mm. Do you wear the Morpheus heart rate monitor while you're rolling? And does that data contribute to like your zone two, zone four volume for the week?
I don't wear
Mm.
the the Morpheus when I train. Um, I don't know. I haven't tried it. I just feel like it might get in the way because it's a
Mm.
strap. I know there's other companies that wear like they have like the spats that you could put the heart rate monitor in. Uh, I don't know. I haven't done it. I like to say I reserve skill work for being skill work.
Mm.
I don't know. It might be useful information. I might experiment that in the future. But as of now, I don't, and I don't necessarily contribute. It doesn't track it hard towards my numbers, my zone two, and other zone volumes. It's just we like I said, Rob's knows my training schedule, so he assumes like, oh, you're doing this much training, this is how much extra conditioning that will
Mm.
be appropriate, right?
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Gotcha. For your strength work in training camp, how does that differ compared to out of camp? Are there certain things you're specifically focusing on or specific changes you're making to the actual strength work in camp versus out of camp?
But it's kind of a difficult question to answer in the sense where I don't really know what a camp is gonna pop up.
Mm.
Like with grappling, it's not like a regular sport like football, basketball. There's a season, right? I think fighters could talk about this more closely because um, although they do have some more say of when they're going to compete, it's very sporadic, and sometimes you got to be ready for a big opportunity. So one of the things I did early on was I got that early strength base when I was like, 18, 19, 20, 21, just stayed under the barbell. Uh, I got a really good strength base going, and now it's more like maintenance and working on certain attributes that are necessary for a specific rule set. Um, but usually my strength and conditioning doesn't really change too much out of in or out of camp. If anything, when we're preparing for something, Rob will make slight adjustments to the volume, uh, maybe choose some different movements that may help us, get some adaptation that we want specific for this, event. But I'm always, even when I'm not preparing for anything, I'm always in the gym. I'm always doing some sort of strength practice or mobility practice or conditioning practice where I'm maintaining all those attributes just so when an opportunity does arise, we make small adjustments and we just start sharpen the sword for the next event.
You mentioned strength and mobility, and in some of the training footage that you're the stuff that you're doing in the gym, it's been awesome to see because it seems like you and Rob are combining so much great stuff where you're using the landmine, working through all these different planes of motion, doing these, dare I say, unconventional exercises at a pretty good intensity where you're getting a great strength stimulus and a good mobility stimulus as well. Was that something you were doing before, or is that something that has just more recently come up with the work you're doing with Rob?
Well, the cool thing about working with Rob, he's been my coach for almost a decade now. So
What?
he's yeah, so he's from where I grew up, and I met him really early in my career. So you could see it in the programming. I have like programs from 10 years ago, nearly 10 years ago. It looks very different because he knows as I age, what I would need on the strength and conditioning side will be different. Um, like, yeah, so we have all these things, and Rob does a. I don't want to do him. I want to do him justice by explaining it right, but he sees all these things as tools, and these tools are used for very specific outcomes, and like, it's all context dependent, right? And one of the things that he takes into consideration is who is this for, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like for me, I'm 30. I just turned 30. I've been training for almost 20 years. Uh, you know, you ask anybody that's been grappling for 20 years, they're dinged up. Grappling's hard on the body. So the thing is, Rob knows that, and he says, what adaptations can I create with D
Mm-hmm.
that's not gonna, take away from his mat time, and that's not gonna take away from, you know, consist they can consistently progressing as I age. And this is why we choose from all these different, practices. We're doing gymnastics, basic leveled ring work. We're still doing barbell work. One thing he has been doing a lot, he's been exploring a lot of the javelin throwers, some of that T-spine stuff. So one of the things that he notices, and that's been always reoccurring for me throughout my grappling career, is like after enough wrestling, that neck, your shoulders start getting tight. And one thing that I think everybody should notice is like grappling is very contracted. We're very here, right? We're like very here, not enough openness. So some of the things he has me doing is like basic like bridging work, but it doesn't stop there. How do I get, him or myself as an athlete, how does he get me to open up more? Like literally open my T-spine. We're doing a lot of skipping. We're doing a lot of a lot of overhead throwing, like javelin stuff. Essentially, you can see that T-spine is gonna open up nice and wide, and under a bunch of different stimuli, like static work, dynamic power stuff. One thing I like to do, and I don't know if anyone does this, um, one of my zone 2 sessions is 20-30 minutes of straight skipping.
Oh.
The straight skipping. And then one of the things is like I wear the heart rate monitor, and it's obviously I'm in my zone 2, so I'm getting the stimulus I want, but I don't want to be confined to a assault bike necessarily. I still do it because I like the assault bike, but one of those sessions I try to skip continuously for 20-30 minutes. Man, if you ever tried that, your hips, shoulders, and just like me, my neck, just feel amazing after that. Is because you're literally just rotating your spine, you're open up that T spine. One of the things he tells me is when you skip, try to be as big as possible. Try to take up as much space as possible. And I know I don't know if anyone's practiced that or tried that. He works closely with the Altus guys, Stu McMillan. So I'm assuming a lot of that track stuff is starting to bleed over into his programming, and it's fun. I find it very fun that it's a program for a grappler. You know?
Dude, I am so freaking geeked that you brought that up because the last guy that I interviewed for the podcast was Graham Tuttle, the barefoot spinner, and
Mm.
he was talking about the just all the amazing benefits that you get from skipping. And he was saying, like, if you're doing your jujitsu warm ups and you're skipping the skips, like, shame on you. Like, you better be doing them skips in the warm up. And so to hear like that is such an integral part of your training as well, it gets me super excited. And I have not tried doing 20 to 30 minutes of skipping, but I will try it. I've been doing a lot of like walking lunges lately for my
Mm,
conditioning for 20 to 30 minutes, but skipping to get the shoulders involved, to get like
yeah.
more spinal rotation, that just sounds incredible. So I appreciate you putting me on game to that.
Oh yeah, you put some nice music on. I do it right after or before practice, so the guys look at me weird, but at the same time, they know not to mess with. Like they assume like, oh, if he's doing it, he's probably doing something for a reason. But dude, I feel great. Like I remember I took some of my friends through that workout, just skipping for 20 minutes. It's like Dude, I've the next morning they feel like everything's kind of flossed out, like the shoulders, the hips, the spine. You feel great. So try it out next. Like do like 10 minutes skipping, 10 minutes lunges, 10 minutes skipping, 10 minutes lunges. You could and stay in zone two. You'll be good.
Are you doing all one direction, or are you mixing up like going forwards and backwards, side to side, different types of skips across the 20 to 30 minutes?
Yeah, so like some days I'll change it. Sometimes I'll go forward, back, like almost like a karaoke
Mhm.
movement sideways. The only constraint that I'm looking for during that time, because it is a zone two session, I just try to stay in zone two. It doesn't matter but there's sometimes I just skip forward, just really focusing on like being open, being really open. Like I said, it's a thing that I don't see a lot of people practice, but I've gained a lot of benefit from it.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm going to give that a try. And I'll report back to you.
Oh yeah.
Are you familiar with David Weck and Weck method?
Oh yeah. I've seen some of his stuff. Yeah, yeah. He does
I,
like the rope flow and stuff.
Yes, yeah, the rope flow. It seems like rope flow is great for a lot of reasons, but it seems like skipping would kind of be like the next evolution of that, where you can get a
Mm,
little bit more explosive ability in there. You can get something that's a little bit more dynamic as opposed to
mm,
staying in one spot and doing the rope flow.
mm.
But specifically with the skips, have you seen those like things, the shaker things? It's like single. I don't want to call them shake weights. That puts a different picture in everyone's head,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
they're like a thing that
The
you hold.
eggs.
Yes, the eggs. They're like kind of
Yeah,
like
like it has.
propulsors.
Yeah, it's like it gives like an acoustic cue, right? Like it tells you
Yes,
like gets a rhythm going. Oh, I've seen those. I haven't tried them, but I might have to do that next time I skip. If I get some, I might have to do that just to get a rhythm going. That's
yeah.
pretty interesting.
Yeah, I don't know if like where all the application for that would be, but he does talk a lot about like, yeah, if someone's having a hard time skipping, put those in their hands, gives them a rhythm, you can do all this crazy stuff with it. So, well, Deandre, this has been absolutely incredible. I appreciate you jumping on the podcast. I had a couple rapid fire questions for you. That definitely doesn't mean that you need to give a rapid fire answer. These are just some rapid fire questions. The first question comes from my guy, Jack, from the Strength Matrix community. His question is, I understand DeAndre is into breath work. I'd like to know about his breathing protocols before, during, and after practice/competition, and any insights on how it's affected his recovery.
So Rob Wilson, he's the one who introduced me to a lot of breath work. At first it was very like programmy, this amount of seconds, if you want to upregulate or downregulate. But now I've been doing it enough where it's kind of intuitive, and I would say like the breath is something that we have voluntary control over, and it has a more direct access to our nervous system, right? So you could tell someone to calm down, or you could tell someone to ramp up, right? And sometimes as a competitor, you need to do either of those, right? I need to ramp up, get ready for a match, or I need to down regulate, get ready to rest. Um, so we could use the breath for that. Some simple thing is like if do some I forget the actual it's like Wim Hof breathing. It's like I can't remember. I'm sorry if I can't remember the actual term, but literally increasing your breath rate will get you
Mm,
ramped up. I've done that
mm,
before matches. So sometimes the coffee's not hidden. Sometimes you need a little more ramped up. So just increasing your breath rate, almost like cyclical hyperventilating. That might be the thing, like purposeful hyperventilating just to get your like stimulated. And then vice versa, like post match, if you don't gotta compete until, hours from there or post practice, like I said earlier, just extending that exhale. Doesn't gotta be super complicated. Extend the exhale, relax if you want to downregulate. Like that's like right now that's the most knowledge I use. Before it may have been a little more prescriptive, but right now that's what I do.
I love it. I love it. Next question is, as a seasoned competitor yourself, and as someone that's also coached people and helped your teammates compete, what would you say are the top one or two big mistakes that you see people make as, say, novice to intermediate competitors?
Hmm. I think going in too many directions at the same time. Like, I know it's exciting, especially early on, and you want to do this thing, you want to do this diet, you want to do this strength protocol, and you want to train this way. I think, as experimenters, and for me, I was formerly I was an engineer, so we did a lot of like testing and experiments. You don't want to change too many variables at once because you don't know what's actually causing an outcome or not. You know, that's not to say that you shouldn't experiment with multiple variables, but after a certain point, too many, you don't know which is making you good. So stick with one thing, try to keep a consistent baseline, do small changes, especially early on, and see what works. And like I said, you want a long career on the mat, so you take all this data, all these experiments, and start applying it later on until it becomes the habits that you use as a competitor or coach. So when you're early on, you're doing these experiments, try to change one thing, maybe two things at most at a time, see how it affects you, reflect on it, journal it, talk to your coach about it, and then, you know, scrap it or keep it. And then rinse, repeat, do it for 10, 15, 20, 25 years, and you're gonna get like this protocol that's the magic protocol that just took years and years and years to develop.
That reminds me a bit of a conversation we had in the car when you came out to Mark Bell's Power Project. You were telling me you were experimenting with some like pre-training supplements for like nootropics to like help with energy and focus during training. Are you still playing around with any like pre-training supplements, nootropics, anything like that?
What was it? I think if I remember correctly, my brother and I were experimenting with ketones, caffeine, obviously, and then the last stack was nicotine. We were, I know probably since then, all the nicotine pouches have blown up. I remember it was as like a focus enhancer for a very uh, low physically demanding day, but more of a, you know, like cognitive, like thinking day or a less strenuous physically day. We would mess around with either chewing a nicotine gum or doing a pouch, and we're experimenting with that. Do I do that now? No, I don't do that anymore. Like for me, I'm very sensitive to the nicotine. I still keep the caffeine. Um, oh, this might be a really cool or not. Some people might not agree with me on this. Lately my pre-training drink of choice is a Mexican Coke, like over ice with espresso on top. That
Okay.
is a very delicious drink. It has simple carbs for pre-training, has a little bit of caffeine in there from the espresso shot, gets you focused, and that's something I try to do on like a Saturday training session. One, it's also a little treat too at the end of the week, just a solid Coke over ice. Try to
Specifically
mess with that
a Mexican Coke.
Mexican Coke, the good one, the good kind.
I love it. Okay. I have that is not something I've tried. But I do love coffee, so maybe I'll give that a try. I wanted to ask you about you and your brother are opening up a school. When is there like an official open date? Where can people go to learn more about it?
Yeah, so with the events of the last 2 years, some good things have lined up for us. Uh, we decided to move back home. Standard is in Maryland. We're going back home to Virginia Beach, about 3 hours away. That's where we grew up, and we're opening Blackbox Grappling Club. It's a gym run by both of us. And we understand we grew up there. We know the talent that's in Virginia Beach, and we just want to do our part in growing grappling back home, and hopefully start guiding the next generation to like uh bigger and bigger stages. Before, you know, you couldn't. Well, grappling has grown so much since I started. There's big payouts. There's people making this as a career, like myself and my brother. Uh, and we want to help people, especially the younger generation, help navigate those things and hopefully, build a get them doing a practice that they enjoy. And if they want to take it to those big stages, they have the resources to.
Awesome. Is there an official open date you guys are targeting, or just stay tuned on Instagram?
So stay tuned on Instagram for sure. All one thing I'm a white belt business owner, so this is the first time I've done anything like this. So I found out that timelines are very uh finicky, so they move around. But I think right now within the next month or two, aiming for around April, we're gonna have everything, all the essentials built out, and we're gonna start a soft opening. So if you guys are in the Virginia Beach area and you want to see what we're about, definitely everybody's welcome to come train at our spot. That's one thing I learned at Standard. We open the doors to everybody. We just want to get every guys and girls good at grappling, and that's the whole mission, man. We're very simple people. What you get is what you see is what you get. It's all about the grappling.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Last question before I let you go, bro. What can you tell us about the Flow Grappling Who's Number One 155-pound Grand Prix?
155 pound. I am announced. I am in that bracket. It's gonna be a four-man bracket for the 155-pound title. Uh, like I said, I don't know who's in there, but I don't really care. Uh, I take it one match at a time. Uh, you know, I just think about what I have to do. I don't get too caught up in the promotional stuff. But if you guys are interested in watching me and watching some really high level grappling, you got Flow account. Tune in to Flow on March 31st. The 155-pound title's on the line, so I'll be there and I'm gonna be doing my best.
Yes, sir. Where can people find you?
You find me on Deandre underscore Corbe on Instagram, my brother at Gavin Sanity underscore, and then our gym is Blackbox Grappling.
Fantastic. Lift heavy, roll hard. Catch y'all later. Peace.